Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Scott Latchett. I am a partner and president of research and strategy at PSFK, and excited to be joining you on day three of the Future of Retail Festival. Over the last 2 days, we have presented some amazing content, which we will be sharing through the channel that you're joining us now once all of that is edited. We've looked at both the reinvention of the physical store experience, both in terms of thinking about consumer safety and security, as well as being more inclusive in terms of the design and the overall experience. On day two, we looked at rethinking live selling and e-commerce through various talks and how we really need to be prepared for the digital first world that we are currently inhabiting. And today, everything DTC, direct to consumer, and what that means as the channel is disrupted and more brands are looking to establish a one-to-one relationship with their consumers. I am excited to be hosting the first talk today. In just a moment, I'm going to be joined by Liam Casey, who is the founder and CEO of PCH. For more than 2 decades, PCH has worked with some of the world's best brands and innovative startups to create and deliver breakthrough products and consumer experiences. We will dive deep into everything that PCH ultimately delivers to its consumers or customers. Liam is a thought leader in the hardware, supply chain, and sustainability, go-to-market, and startup initiatives. He's disrupted traditional product development and supply chain models, and has been driving innovative solutions and success to many global brands. I can go on in a number of the accolades that Liam has garnered over the course of his career, but I will allow him to kind of share a bit more about PCH and what it offers to its customers. If we can welcome him to the stage right now.
Good afternoon. Hello,
Hey,
Scott.
Liam, thank you so much for joining us today. And I know I gave a little bit of a background on your bio, but I wanted to let you, as the expert in your business, provide a bit more background on what it is that PCH does and offers to your clients.
Great. Well, thank you, Scott. Yeah, we work with clients from all over the world that have ideas and concepts for products and they want to bring it to market. They need a robust supply chain to bring it from concept all the way through to the consumer. And that is like in the hardware world is engineering. It's we don't do the industrial design. We partner with industrial designers. And then we do the product design, product development, engineering. We bring it into get it ready for MPI, new product introduction, mass production into the facilities that produce the product. And then we actually manage the out-of-box experience, so the packaging part of the business where we actually pack the product. And then we manage the last mile delivery, D2C. And it's that end-to-end is what's important. And more recently, we've been doing more around the what happens post the sale when the customer gets the product, when they go through that out-of-box experience. What is that experience like? We work with some of our brands to help them understand feedback from customers, or what do they need to change. Like we run surveys with customers live, so that we can get interaction from the consumer about the product. And that end-to-end stack is what we focus on.
That's amazing, and I like the fact that you added in that sort of component there of that sort of post-purchase component, which is so often kind of forgotten in the, it's the rush to get things to the consumer, but there's really so much that can happen after that fact as well.
Yeah, and it is really where the experience for the consumer starts. It is that experience moment of truth, and you really have to be close to the consumer when that happens, because that's the make or break. If it's a great experience, they'll come back, and that's where brands start to build that relationship and that bond with the consumer, which is what's all important.
So I know we'll get more into sort of PCH's offering as we go through the conversation today, but much of what we're going to be focusing on as the sort of for our conversation or discussion today is going to be around a piece of research that we partnered on, which I know we're going to make available to everybody that's tuning in here, which is all on the art of the drop. And I wonder. I think people have a lot of assumptions about what a product drop is, and you obviously bring a unique perspective to defining that model. So, just as context for the rest of our conversation, if you could take a moment and just describe what we mean by a product drop.
Yeah, let's look at across three different areas. If you look at like the way the fashion industry is doing it, the way the tech industry in general are doing it, and then the way the startups are doing it. I think if you look at, say, the fashion industry, you look at companies like Supreme, the way they'll do a drop, it gets massive attention around the world. It gets like when they're doing a global drop, everyone queues up either virtually or physically, and they actually get the product, and it's almost like winning the product. If you look at the tech world in general, if you look at China, this is where you see a lot of it. You look at where this is how Xiaomi started years ago, probably about 10 years, 11 years ago now, I don't know, but 9 years ago, I think, where they actually would launch a batch of products. So they would make 100,000 phones or 500,000 phones. And then they would actually, when the phones were coming off the production lines, they would actually then release it to consumers to go online. And I think the fact that China was such a big online presence meant that that's where consumers went to get the product. You also see companies like OnePlus doing the same thing. They're again Chinese company, but global reach, and they actually do the very same. They'll do a launch, and usually the product sells out on launch, and that creates what's in the industry is known as hunger marketing. Well, they'll oversell what they have capacity, and then there's a backlog, and people will wait for it, and it gives them the chance to go and produce more. We like it because it's from a sustainability point of view, you're actually reducing the amount of excess that's in the market. And then you look at the way startups do it, which is crowdfunding, which we don't like, but it happens. And it was a great tool when it started. You great companies like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, they have these fantastic tools that actually allow you to go out online and create that, excitement about a product. And allowed people, it got a lot of interest and got people purchase, people put deposits on. But the problem was the experience might not come for a year. In some cases, it didn't come at all. So that did damage to the whole concept of like what we call a drop for startups. And I think it dented confidence in the investor market of investing in just because you've been successful in getting interest in a product from a video. That doesn't mean you can deliver and execute. And that's where we help companies. If you look at the Chinese model of the companies like Xiaomi or say somebody like OnePlus, they know they can execute. They won't go out and pre-sell the product until they know it's ready to ship, that generates huge interest.
Yeah, so that's an interesting distinction. There is that sort of difference between what you're saying is like crowdfunding traditionally has kind of been this like pre-sell market, whereas the drop is much more intentional in terms of we know we can produce all X number of units, and the goal is to sell those out. You talked about how sort of the timing aspect of drops is such a sort of critical component in sort of going through that process of executing. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about those, about how you think about that sort of the drop model and those sort of stages and sort of bringing a product from that sort of initial phase into the market.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, I think the way we think about it is that crowdfunding is a marketing tool. It is not a financing tool. And that's the big difference. Whereas the companies like Xiaomi, they saw it as a great way to market and to get excitement and buzz around the product. Whereas the companies in the Western world saw it as a great way to raise money. But if they underestimated the money, then when the money's out, they can't finish and they can't deliver on the draw. And that's what creates that 1 year gap in the middle, which is the disaster. So crowdfunding is a marketing tool, not a finance tool. You've got to fund your product, the development of the product, independently of that. And that's why some companies now, if you look at some of the more established companies that have started to use crowdfunding recently, they're actually generating a lot of interest, and they can, if they use it as a benchmark to see what kind of interest is in the product, and that's when they actually turn on the fuel to produce the product, which is good, makes sense. But if you look at it, I mean, for us, in a product, you've got to have like the concept for a product, and then you actually get into the industrial design, the product design, and then you've got to get it ready for mass production. And that's the stage where we think you can actually start to generate interest. And it's great if you generate interest, like if you're a month or 6 weeks away from the product being ready to ship, then you can actually then you can actually go and crowdfund and generate the interest, because the interest will, you'll get media coverage, you'll get the blogs will be talking about your product, which is what you want, right? That's all part of the interest. And then the purchase happens, where people actually can buy the product. And then the experience, you want to create the experience very close to the purchase, like within days if possible, so that when people actually purchase or pay the hand over the money, that they're going to get the product within days, maximum maybe a week, 10 days, because that's where you create that link between the purchase and the experience is really important. And then the experience starts when they get it, that out-of-box experience. That's when you build that relationship with the consumer.
And you talked about this, and you just sort of hinted at it now, where there's this sort of like interesting moment where in between, as you're sort of in that sort of generating interest phase, almost having that gap is an advantage or an opportunity, because that creates some sort of space for a business to kind of like look at the marketplace and the interest, and then use that as a moment to kind of refine the experience. Can you dive into that a little bit more there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at some of the companies, they'll have a pattern for when they'll launch a phone or launch a device, and like you'll see that some like the bigger companies that are experienced in the space, they'll make their announcement, let's say early in the month, and then they'll say it'll ship within 3 weeks or 4 weeks. In between that 3 weeks, they give the product, the device, they give it to bloggers, to tech reviewers, who actually go and test it, and they write about it, and that generates more interest and more hype about the product, so that when you do launch it for purchase, that there is a demand there for it. And again, the other thing as well is we're seeing a lot more focus on planning and getting the product to know what success looks like. It's amazing. We've sat with so many entrepreneurs over the years that have great ideas for great products, and we ask them, what does success look like in year one? And they'll come out with numbers like 10 million or whatever. Like, and you say, hang on a second, I think Apple sold 500,000 iPods in the first year. So it's context. Understand what success looks like, and build that into your business plan, which is a big thing, which we say to all of the companies, the startups we work with, especially. But even like with now, we're finding that more the more established brands are also we're focused on. They have a benchmark now for what, like in their space, what does success look like, and that's really important. And then how do we achieve it, and how do we go beyond it?
And you also you mentioned this sort of idea that also in that sort of that time, is there, if the sort of infrastructure is in place, sort of operationally, you can also sort of tweak the customer experience during that time as well, and almost use that sort of 6 to 8 weeks to really sort of like go from a fairly finished idea and then really kind of refine that during that time. Is that what is sort of necessary in order to have that sort of
Yeah.
mechanism in place?
The number one thing is that it's a D2C business. So you're going direct to consumer. So you actually have control of the experience. You're not dependent on third party retailer or something. You are going to control that complete end to end experience, which is the most important thing. And if you look today in our world, we always say that we're like 3 hours from all the factories we work with. And we're 3 days from 90% of the consumers anywhere in the world that will buy the products which we touch. So that, for us is really important. We call it a long last mile. If you look at, say, Amazon talks about, I think it's an 8 mile last mile. Now, to put stock into an 8 mile last mile, you've needed a lot of warehouses around the world to do that. Whereas we talk about an 8,000 mile last mile. That has a huge impact. And especially for if you're funding the supply chain, one warehouse is much easier to fill than multiple warehouses. And that long last mile, again, you have control of the experience. If you are, planning the moment of interest, the moment of purchase, and the moment of experience, you can decide, if the air freight to get it to the last mile to the consumer takes 10 days, it doesn't matter once you know it's going to get there, because you can schedule when you ship. And it's about managing the consumer's experience as well, which is really important.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and I mean, it's learning more about that sort of that long last mile as you sort of talk about it. It's pretty incredible because it obviously opens up the door for a business to literally be sort of selling globally right out of the gate, essentially. And I also the sort of ability to drop ship directly from that sort of warehouse that's like right near manufacturing also opens up some additional benefits. And I wonder if you can kind of unpack that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think, look, one of the things that what happens with the D2C model is that, and especially now, what we're seeing with a lot of the companies we work with, once you move to D2C, your business changes and your mindset has to change. You move completely from a forecasting model to a planning model. And what I mean by that is that you depended on a retailer's forecast, or a third-party retailer, or an e-commerce partner forecast if you're in traditional channels. If you're going D2C, you're planning, because you have to do the planning, and you have to make the decisions, and you have to make the calls. And what, like, okay, we're going to sell, 1,000,000 units or 100,000 units, whatever that number is. So you're going to do your planning and your scheduling. You'll say, okay, if it's, we're going to, the product's coming off the production line on the 1st of September. We're going to have it ready for production within 24 hours, 48 hours, or for pack out and for delivery. And then you're going to tell consumers we're going to deliver on the 15th of September. So you actually then take anything up to 10 days to do that delivery, which you can do very well. And again, you will have all the consumers' details, their addresses, all their contact details. You'll have all that. You can manage all that. Put you in much more control, more so than, say, if you're going to like ship it to a retailer and or an e-commerce partner, they're going to put it in a warehouse, and you kind of like, you have no power. You kind of sit back and wait for them to tell you, hey, your product is sold. It's great. Whereas like that's it's not a good model.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, when we were talking earlier, I had always sort of, wrongly, I guess, assumed that forecasting and planning were kind of like a synonymous term, but really in the way that you sort of think about it, and that sort of switch is that the sort of planning model is much more intentional, and you are making very concrete decisions about what it is that you're trying to achieve.
And we're seeing that even more now. I think that we were saying this when we spoke, that we're seeing it more now. We're seeing that, post COVID, that brands are saying, hey, we can't wait for the channel to tell us what the forecast is. We have to make the decision. And this is one of the things we love about the output of the last 3 months, is that brands are actually saying, hey, no, we're taking control and we're making our own decisions and we're planning rather than waiting for forecasts. And they're saying, okay, in the absence of having a forecast that we can, trust, we are going to we're going to plan, and we're going to paint a picture of what success looks like. This puts the brand in control. It gives them much more power.
And so, I'm curious, and I know you sort of like touched on this a bit, but what is from a very sort of practical point of view, like how do you think about that sort of like drop execution? Like how do you define or ensure sort of success within the context of using this model?
Again, look, global logistics is very mature and it's very competitive now. So again, one of the things what we do is we break down the first mile and the last mile, and we're the first mile we'll buy it bulk from an airline. We'll buy it from some of the freight companies. The last mile will go to local partners who will do that last mile, and we'll coordinate it globally. And sometimes we'll do a global deal with some of the bigger companies, the bigger well-known freight or express service companies. We'll manage that entire journey. And again, working with the brands, depending on the value of the product, depending on the experience that they want to create, we will then decide, okay, so it's going to be like next day air from around the world, or 48-hour air. That's expensive, but depending on the value of the product, it may make more sense. 48 hours air might cost X dollars, but if you're going to sit it, in a warehouse warehouses all around the world, you're going to have working capital tied up. That's massive risk. And again, as a company, we don't take risk, we manage risk. And this is a big part of de-risking business D2C.
Yeah, I love that sort of idea of how the sort of working capital is much more sort of like agile or available to brands in sort of this context, so that they can be much more intelligent about how they're sort of like operating their business. And then I guess from a sort of practical point of view as well, like thinking about you're able to work to the level of like helping a brand sort of determine what that package is going to look like, what that sort of unboxing experience is going to be. And then are you also able to, in that sort of interim between, sort of a package is shipped and it gets to the consumer, are you able to help brands with that experience as well? Like that sort of like lead, like that communication in between?
Yeah, I mean, look, for us, a major distinction for us when we work with companies, we look for companies that are passionate about design, they're passionate about their brand, and they're passionate about the consumer experience. That's where we add value. Anybody else, we just add cost. We're not interested in that space. We want to work with brands that really care about those three things: design, brand, consumer experience. That's where we really differentiate. And that starts with ensuring that the product is well designed, ensuring you're using great materials, the right materials, sustainable, ensuring you minimal packaging. You're going to have that out-of-box experience is going to be great, but you're not going to use like extra, material that's not necessary. And then it's when the consumer gets it. The other thing is we'll do, like we have in our facility, we have drop test capabilities. So when we'll test the product, over and over and over again, so that if it falls along the journey, that it's not going to fall apart and that it's going to stay intact. And so we'll do all that, because that's all part of that out-of-box experience. When the consumer gets it and they take it out of the box, it has to be a great experience. And then it's likewise, it has to work. So, we insert questionnaires for consumers that they can actually, when they take the product out of the box, they can scan, they take a photograph of a QR code that will take them to an app, or take them to a website where they can answer questions about the experience. And if they have any questions about the product, they can ask those questions there. And through AI, we can actually answer quite a few of those.
And I'm curious, I mean, we talked about this a bit at the beginning, but obviously there's, so much of what the drop model is that we're kind of familiar with exists within the context of like a fashion, particularly sort of streetwear perspective, and you obviously see that being much more applicable to all product categories. What does it, what's the mindset shift or for other brands to really sort of like make that switch, or what is the challenge, like what's the challenge? Why do we not see this more widely?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's usually it's down to historic numbers and historic targets that they have got to meet, and they don't, they need channel marketing, they need channel dollars to get the product out there, and they're in that rat race to get product out. I actually think now is probably a really interesting time, and some of the best conversations we're having now, because it's a chance for a lot of brands to restart, because they haven't been very active, and some of them have, their e-commerce has really boomed in the last 3.5 months. So they're very open for these conversations today, and they're saying, "Wow, we just put our toe in the water, and it's not that bad, and we can actually do this." And I think that now is a really interesting time for brands that really want to innovate and to get control of their brands, and to make sure that their marketing dollars are being spent direct to the consumers that buy their products, and give them a chance to build a relationship and the bond with those consumers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so much of what we're seeing sort of across the board and all the conversations that we're having, and especially over the last 3 days, is that this sort of moment that we're in now is a sort of opportunity to kind of reinvent the way that business is done. And there's still risk associated with it, but if not now, then when, sort of thing. So
Yeah, I think I heard the joke the other day is, who is the greatest innovator in your company? Is it the CEO, the CMO, or COVID-19? COVID-19 is winning most of that.
So I guess as we sort of sort of close out the conversation, and you just sort of hinted on this a little bit, but as we sort of continue to emerge from the sort of current situation, what do you sort of see in terms of what's going to shift in terms of how brands and businesses sort of operate?
So I think the relationship, the D2C, I think is definitely, everyone knows it's increasing. You look at the beauty industry and what it has done there. And I think it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to continue to grow across different sectors. And then, sure enough, what happens in every sector is if one brand shows a sign of success, everybody will copy them. So all it takes is one breakthrough in a sector, and they're going to be copied, which is great. I think so. You're going to find a lot more relationship building between the consumer and the brand, and then consumers will make or brands will make commitments that they will deliver a great experience, and that's where they really have to engage, and they have to focus on, okay, what does the consumer want, and you can manage it. If you go back like 5 years ago, I would have been sitting here telling you, hey, I can make 1 million units a day. Today, I tell you, I can manage orders of 1 a day. So that's a big change. But yet it's far more sustainable. You can still do very large volumes, massive volumes, but you need to be able to manage down to individual consumer, individual order. And you want to be able to connect that unique product to that unique consumer anywhere in the world. And I think that you're going to see, in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of investment going into logistics. And I think you're going to see that's going to continue. Smart logistics are really important. And we see some of the stuff that we're testing out at the moment with some of our micro DCs, where we're actually shipping product. We still consider it to be an 8,000 mile last mile, where we ship the product from origin directly to the consumer. And we'll do it in the shortest time possible. We may have a break in the very last mile, but that break is strategic because it is to allow us to use companies like Uber, Postmates, Axel Hire, any of these companies that can manage last mile. But they will actually do the last mile, but they'll pick it up at our micro DC, and they'll do it at a scheduled time over a period of 24 hours. It just gives us greater control over that last mile delivery. We'll know the driver, we'll know the consumer, we'll know that connection point when it happens. And we can do all that, inside 48 hours from when it leaves the production line where it's produced to when it's actually delivered to the consumer. And we also show, there's a QR code on the box, on every box that shows, when you scan it, it shows you through that entire journey. It's completely transparent. And you can go all the way direct from the consumer or from the production line all the way through, and we're completely transparent.
That's amazing. It really is like, I mean, even as you describe the sort of like the Uber kind of component within there, like there is that sort of ability to really create this very one-to-one relationship where it's even just like, there's a known individual who's handing off that product, so to speak, to the consumer.
Absolutely, and you look at it, you've got like it's existing assets that are in the marketplace that are underutilized, and all you're doing is utilizing that existing those assets.
That's incredible. Well, Liam, thanks so much for taking the time today. As a reminder, everyone, we do have a report that we just published with PCH called The Art of the Drop. I think it's in the comments of this of our live stream today. And if you have any difficulties accessing it, please get in touch and we'll make sure that we get that in your hands. Liam, good luck with everything. Thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Scott.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this session. We're going to be hearing from 4 panelists today, and they're going to be talking about how the future of retail is human. Retail is evolving, and the new generation of consumers demands a higher standard when it comes to a brand's value. They look to bond with a brand that reflects their own values and want to trust what a brand stands for and understand its purpose. So we're about to hear from a wonderful group of speakers about ways that a brand can equip the new digital storefront with the same passion and human connection that is present in physical stores. Today's panel is made up of Susie Ross, who is a senior advisor to Accenture Retail. She's has a particular focus on how data can be made accessible and embedded within every area of an organization. We're going to hear from Kevin Van Leeuwen. He's the flagship director for the first Amiri retail boutique on Rodeo Drive this September. Rob Niedzwiecki, who helped us organize this panel, is a senior sales manager with Proximity Insight. And finally, we're joined by Brendan Flood, who's the CRM manager for fashion with the Chalhoub Group, the largest luxury retailer in the Middle East.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We have a global audience today, and I'm super excited to be having this discussion on the future of retail as human. During this webinar, feel free to drop a couple of comments in the YouTube chat on the bottom right. We'll do our best to answer these questions as we're going on, and if we don't do that, we'll follow up with you guys afterwards. And on top of that, I want to say thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to listen to this conversation, to talk about how we're able to connect on a human level in the ever digital changing world of retail. My name is Rob, and I am with Proximity Insight. Proximity Insight is a software company that simply connects people with each other. And in the retail industry, we call this clienteling. If you want to learn more about Proximity Insight, there's a QR code right here. You're more than welcome to pick up your phone, scan it. You'll be able to schedule an appointment with us. You could see how our solution works. You could learn about our visions and values, and you'll also see a QR image behind my head as well. But we're not here to talk about our solution. What we're here is to talk about the power of human connection. And I'm going to go right into it and introduce our speakers. First one is, we have Brendan and Susie and Kevin. Brendan, if you want to take it from here.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Brendan Flood. Thank you, Rob, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I am the CRM department manager for all the fashion vertical at the Chalhoub Group, which is the largest luxury retailer in the Middle East. And it is a pleasure to be here.
Susie, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Rob. Susie Ross. I'm the founder of a boutique strategy consultancy called Bureau of Customer Keepers, and we focus on customer analytics and helping organizations navigate a transformation from being product-centric to being customer-centric. I have a background as an entrepreneur. I was a founder and CEO of a premium denim brand for 10 years. I have also most recently been with Accenture.
And Kevin? Kevin, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening to everybody. My name is Kevin Van Leeuwen. I am the retail flagship director for Amiri. We are opening our first flagship store on Rodeo Drive this September. Amiri is a luxury fashion house that is launched in 2014, and we are excited to, enter the world of Rodeo Drive and retail. So it's been my biggest privilege to start developing the team and opening the store in September. I've had over 16 years of luxury retail management in the Southern California area.
Perfect. So want to open it up and talk about a memorable experience. Recently that I've had one in the past. I had to buy something for my girlfriend. Her name is Christine. And she actually had her wallet completely torn into pieces, and she was ready for a new one. And it was a great idea to get her something for Christmas. And she loves the Kate Spade brand. And I'm not familiar with it. I walked into the store. I'm like, these are not products that I am familiar with or know what to buy. And there was a sales associate who saw I was a little bit uncomfortable. She came up to me, she introduced herself, and she spent a good hour going through different products and specifically a wallet that was picked out, and it was beautiful. And now every single time I see Christine using this wallet, it always brings me back to this, special moment that kind of resonates and sticks with me. So Brendan, the question for you is what's a memorable moment that you've experienced in the past?
Okay, good question. Well, if I had to say, there's probably, if I can cheat a little bit, there's kind of two that strike out very much in my mind. One was when I was much, much smaller than I am now, and I was in a store called Build-A-Bear Workshop back in the States. I'm sure some of you on the call may be familiar. But essentially the experience is you're a young kid, you walk into the store, and from beginning to end, they build this bear in front of you. You pick out what it's stuffed with, what clothes it's wearing, what it looks like. And right at the very end, they give you a little heart that you have to kiss, and they sew it into the bear. And that sticks out to me because it's one thing, it's capitalizing on a moment. You're taking something that's very, it's manufacturing, right? Someone can be doing that in the back of the house, but you bring it to the forefront and you make it something that's touch point for someone, and they really make it personal, and that's something that I can't really ever forget about for that particular reason. And then the second would be something that very kind of turned my mind frame around how retail can work, and that's the Nordstrom men's store in New York. And in that store, there's so many amenities that have nothing to do with what they sell. There's a barber shop, there's a restaurant, there's a bar, there's a whole floor in the basement just to watch sports. And you can wander in there and forget that you're even in a retail experience because everything around there is catered for your experience. It's everything, every touch point there is optimized to make it fun to be in. And I spent maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours in that store with my family before I realized, oh, right, this is an actual store. Like, you can buy stuff here. And I walked out with more stuff than I probably would have. But that whole reason was like, this is something different. This is taking something very traditional and making it very modern and making it very memorable. And I think that had a huge impact on just how I view retail in general.
No, that's awesome. I've also gone through the Build-A-Bear, and I actually bought a gift for my niece that almost got regifted until they squeezed it, and I actually sent a message to my niece. But Susie, same question. What is something that was memorable for you?
I've been thinking about this for the last few hours, and I can't think of anything from a retailer that is memorable, which means maybe I'm shopping in the wrong shops, or retail has a journey to go on in terms of memorable experiences. But I often draw on the airline industry in terms of the recognition they have of the experience and the journey and how they can differentiate people's experiences. And a personal experience, I'm a very grumpy traveler. I like being at home, but I have to travel a lot for work. And I think it was like the 8th Monday in a row that I was at Heathrow Terminal 5 and 8 a.m. in the morning. I just didn't want to be there. And British Airways, I don't know whether they saw I was just in a foul mood, but they spontaneously upgraded me. And I think it transformed. I mean, it was transformed. I was delighted. And what was interesting about it, and I think it's the cost of doing it was minimal for them, and the perceived value to me was so high. So I think once retailers start to recognize their role as service providers, and ways in which they can differentiate experiences and differentiate customers, I hopefully will have a story to tell from retail next time you ask me that question.
Oh, I hope so as well. And the saddest moments in my professional career is when I lost my platinum status with American Airlines. Got that downgraded. Kevin, same question to you as well.
So it's actually not just one specific moment. It's more about the clients that I've developed over the course of a few years. And this one specifically comes to mind because she reached out last week, and it was like 10:30 at night, and she texted me up for a pair of shoes for a company that I worked at prior to Amiri. And she goes, I found these at Nordstrom's, but I rather, have you help me. And I said, well, I don't work there anymore, but let me facilitate it for you, because I still have a network and connection with most everybody that I worked with from previous employers. And I had met this specific client and her family in 2015, and they came into my store, and I started helping. My sales associate helped the whole family. There was 5 of them. They're from Ohio, and I've been able to was just helping the father with a pair of shoes, and what could have turned into more of a challenging situation because he was frustrated turned into a really good situation, and we won him over with just customer service. And it's about listening to the client and what they need, and giving your full attention to what they're there for, because they walked into your store for a purpose and a reason. So understanding what that reason is, but being able to continue the relationship for years and years and years, and having their daughter still reach out to me 5 years later for a pair of shoes for a company that I don't work for anymore, and then only to have the next day her text me and her social media say, thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Jay, from the store for getting me these beautiful shoes. But it wasn't even, she didn't have to walk in a store, and she didn't have to search or get frustrated. She knew exactly that I could help her, and I was able to facilitate a sale that had nothing to do with where I'm currently working, but it was about the relationship and the fact that these clients remember how you make them feel. And every time you make somebody feel special, that's when the relationship starts to develop. And that's what special feelings come to me when it comes to talking about retail. It's all about how I make the client feel and how the client responds. And the fact that you can think of me at 10:30 at night because you want a pair of shoes makes me feel amazing. So that's my story about how feeling special in retail.
No, that's amazing. And the fact that you have this relationship for over 5 years and still growing, and it's following you throughout your career.
Yeah.
The store is opening up in Amiri, exciting in September. So how do you want to recreate these experiences?
So the exciting part about joining Amiri has been the fact that we are a newer company, but I've been able to take my years of experience and my network and my connection with people, and be able to really build and facilitate a team that's going to set a high bar for what Amiri stands for, and for what clienteling and for relationship building looks like for the brand, because I have super high expectations over the course of the past few years. It doesn't take much to connect with a client. It just takes listening and being fully devoted to hearing what they need.
Awesome. And Brendan, you mentioned earlier before of going to Nordstrom's Men, and there's like a barber shop, there's a restaurant and everything. There's this whole entire experience. I've actually been there as well recently. And do you want to recreate something similar with Chaloup? Are there any discussions on that? Like, what would you like to happen?
So one of the values of the group here is people at heart. And that is something that from a very, very top down is held very dearly within the group. And what we manifest people at heart is we have to really consider why we're in business. And I think it's a very, historic mindset to be in business to make money. But being as, the world itself is transforming and we as people are evolving, I think that the role of business is to serve a consumer, to serve their community, and to keep that person at the forefront of that. If you go from a visual design, you say that store, if you want to use that as an example, they put the products last. They had to build everything in that store before they could put merchandise in there. So they thought of the sale as a secondary point before they thought of how can I make this a great experience for my consumer, for my customer, for everyone who walks in that door. I think that's something that at Shalhoub we really try to emphasize, and we work with a lot of global brands, especially in the Middle East, or primarily in the Middle East. But what we really try to focus on is how are we serving people? It's a very Rob, when you visit, you'll see it's a very common. You walk in and they ask you, it's second, how can I help you? It's, can I get you something to drink? Would you like a coffee? Would you like a water? Would you like a tea? Would you like to sit down? Can I hold this for you? Before they even get into a conversation of selling you something. And I think that itself is transformative. That is something that culturally we're trying to instill as we, put our influence on more and more things, that the people who come in come first. And why they come in, that's the second part of the conversation. So yeah, that's definitely absolutely something that we emphasize in the group. Within all of our locations, that's something that we always try to keep in mind is to have that core value, is to have the people at heart.
No, that's amazing. And I do look forward to, flying over to Dubai and seeing you and hopefully witnessing this experience firsthand. Susie, you've worked throughout your career, you said you had your own brand. You've also advised others as well. How do you drive that engagement? Brendan mentions people come in and experience this, but how do you drive that engagement, and how do you continually build that relationship with the customer?
So the way I always think about it is you have essentially four different types of things that you can do to both create that initial connection, where you just do something, you go above and beyond, you surprise and delight a customer, and you've got them. But then you have to keep that relationship going, you have to keep that engagement. And I always think in terms just to organize my thoughts, organize my sort of creative ideas, in terms of four ways in which, in terms of human behavior, that you can form a connection. And it's not dissimilar to a human relationship. It's you're trying to build a connection. So in no particular order of importance, convenience, can I make someone's life much easier? I think that's where Amazon Prime Amazon Prime now, it's buying something is as easy as breathing. I think another thing that is really important in terms of convenience is fixing things quickly. If you're a retailer and there's a problem, the onus is on the retailer to fix it, not the customer who's gone to the hassle of coming back to the store to, so I do think around the area of convenience, there's huge opportunity for retailers to create and maintain that connection. Generosity, the feeling that a customer is getting a lot more out of the relationship than, if they're gonna shop with you, they want to feel that you value that relationship with them. So spontaneous acts of generosity, whether it's a small gift, go a long way to make someone feel special. Third area is the whole area of higher purpose. Does the brand's values and actions resonate with things that are important for me? So I think we've obviously seen in the last few months an enormous sort of a seismic thing going on, and people have been very discerning, working out which brands are being authentic in their response to that. So I think for a brand and a retailer to be crystal clear on their purpose and make a stand rather than just trying to please everybody is also important. And going back to my earlier example of status, if I'm going to commit to a relationship with a brand or a retailer, I want to feel special. So increasingly, I think as people start to, sort of narrow down where they're shopping and say, actually, I'm going to build a relationship with this brand and retailer, I want to feel valued, I want to feel important. It's human nature. So I think those four areas are a great place to start when you're thinking of designing, as retailers think about designing a customer experience, a service, is to start with those four areas and say, how are we going to represent ourselves on those four pillars?
one thing that you mentioned again, like if Brendan knows me, Kevin, you'll learn that I have a really big Nike set of products. I have tons of Air Forces. I love the brand. I play sports. I love the athletic. But I take a step back and I go, why do I love this brand so much? So like Susie, exactly what you said is the purpose. You know, when the Women's World Cup was going on and Nike was talking about pay equality and supporting the women's team, and right now they're doing their "Don't Do It," you know, as opposed to "Just Do It" with their campaign of being quiet on racism. These things resonate with me, you know, on like my moral compass. So I also find myself so connected to this brand. So Brendan, you know, is there a brand that, you know, regardless of the product, do you feel connected with a brand?
I would not say that I feel connected to a specific brand that kind of has my loyalty undying, simply because we have entered a phase culturally, politically, where brands themselves have created identities themselves that you have to kind of align your core beliefs with, right? Every brand now has mission statements and core values that they put out, not just for shareholders, but for the public to say, I believe in this. I take a stand in this. And I think we've hit a precipice where you have to decide where you land and where you're going to contend to consume and who you're going to continue to consume with. Because this, again, back to Susie's point, is relationships. Right? I have a relationship with you now. It's as much a human relationship as it could be. So I'm not going to put in my circle any bad relationship or any ill relationship where you're doing something I don't believe in, or I'm giving you my money to then do something I don't believe in. So I think as a whole, I've taken a step back and I've reevaluated. Back to your point around Nike, why I have Nikes? What do they believe in? You know, I buy certain brands. What do they believe in? What stands have they taken? What points have they made? Or what have they not said that makes me say I can't support that anymore? I think we've hit that point now where we have, as consumers and even as brands, have to say, what do I believe in? And that's where I'm going to build this relationship with it. The affinity for a style or a trend, that's gone. I think those days are behind us. I think now we've entered into a mode where we have to really say, you know, do you line up with me enough for me to have this relationship with you for a long time?
I think Rob might be frozen.
Brendan, I couldn't agree more with you on that. We're making choices now about what brands we connect with. So if Rob has frozen, shall I? I'll share. There's one brand that I feel an enormous connection with. I'm at the stage in my life where I'm not swayed by advertising or PR or celebrity placement. I'm really looking for authenticity. And there is a small Irish knitwear brand called Inishmaan that I think is a masterclass in authenticity. Its manufacturing and head office is based on a tiny island off the west coast of Ireland. And they use nothing but local women on the island. It's a very bleak, desolate island. And this small knitwear brand ships all over the world. You will find it in Isetan, every boutique store in the US. There's a fabulous video on Mr. Porter all about, it's 8 minutes long, and it's all about this island and this brand. And for me, this connection with place, people, and purpose means I've rarely come across a brand that has such power and authenticity as this small knitwear brand. And once a year, I go to this island and I visit the shop and I buy knitwear. And it is a pilgrimage. It takes about 11 hours to get there, but it's extraordinary.
kind of cut out there for a second, so I missed some of that story. But from what I was hearing there at the end, Susie, that's amazing. Brendan, you shared yours. Kevin, did you have a chance to
Not yet,
talk
but
about a brand that you resonate with as well?
actually just listening to, so it's not specifically about a brand, but it comes back down to the people that work inside of the space. So I'm going to use, because I shop at Whole Foods a lot, and it's not just one Whole Foods, it's a specific Whole Foods, because I feel like every time I walk in there, it's like walking into my own home. And those people, they're not trying to clientele you per se, but every time I walk in there, it doesn't matter if it's a cashier or somebody working behind the coffee bar or the hot bar. They've gotten to know me, and it's more about the smile and knowing me by name and really saying, hey, Kevin, how are you this evening? And it's not about just specifically about the brand. Yes, it's about what the brand stands for, but also it's about the way that the people that work for the brand represent it and make you feel. And when you walk into a space and you can tell that the employees are excited to be there and passionate about what they do and excited to be part of a company that, you know, makes them feel good, that speaks volumes to me. And so when you walk into a store, regardless if it's a grocery store, a luxury store, or any type of space, when the employees, you know, have this energy behind them that makes you feel like you want to be there, it screams words about the brand and about who the brand stands for and how they treat their people. And it's all about the people, going back to the people and how they feel. So it's not just one specific brand, it's about going into a space that makes you feel good.
Oh, and I completely resonate with this as well, Kevin. Whenever I go to a Starbucks, when I was living in Jersey and Edgewater, there was a specific place that I would go to, and as soon as I was walking in, by the time I got to the counter, they had my order. They knew exactly which coffee I wanted. They're like, "Hey, Rob, how's it going? Here you go," and I just loved it. So completely get it. We actually do have a question from the audience from Brandon. So talk a bit about how to cultivate relationships remotely over digital platforms. Without the physical stores, delivering on-brand promise and being personal is challenging digitally, but critically. So Brendan, you're a CRM manager. I think that would be a good question for you. Brendan to Brendan.
Oh, okay. Well, I think what we've been seeing in the industry this year has been something completely unpredictable, with, you know, massive closures, people unable to travel, people not able to visit locations, and it would be, you know, negligent to say that I'm sad that we lost money, right? Because, you know, people lost a lot more than that. I think what we saw here was, how can we again maintain this connection? And what we were able to do in a lot of instances is really use those one-on-one relationships that our frontliners, our associates established with our customers to continue to keep that conversation going even when stores were closed. And this is something I'm sure Kevin is very familiar with. You get to know these people very personally. You have their phone numbers, you know their kids, you know, you send thoughtful notes to them just to check in on them, see how you're doing. And that boomed. I mean, that blossomed was really, it was people getting on WhatsApp and sending notes. Hey, I'm still doing well. How are you doing? How's your family? We're doing great. And those conversations continue and they deepen because of that. You know, in times of crisis, people come together, even closer. And I mean, outside of just a retail environment, you know, people have real connections here, and I think that's something that we've seen be consistent throughout, you know, the remainder of this year. And even when we're not able to have physical stores, how are we still able to, you know, to meet our customer halfway? I mean, we have associates writing, you know, they'll be in this, I mean, writing handwritten notes and putting it in the bag and then dropping it off themselves. You know, there's not like a UPS truck here delivering things. These are the actual associates in the stores sending orders to customers. Hey, you know, I got a couple things you might like. Can I stop by, socially distant? You know, I'll be outside. I'll just hold it up in front of the window and you can say whether you like this or not. You know, and it's something that's been, it's been really empowering to see. It's been really heartwarming in a lot of these cases, because these people become very close to each other, and as a brand, you have to be able to meet these challenges, and remember that at the end of the day, this is all a human connection. Be it a physical store, be it a website, be it a clienteling app, which are incredibly beneficial. It's at the end of the day, it comes down to that relationship that you have with that person. And I think that's something I've seen a lot of during this time.
If I could actually add on to that, Rob, I just had an experience that could help answer that. Is since we don't actually have a store open yet, we have an e-commerce business, and I don't have my team fully in place yet, but I have all my candidates, and they're about to start and they're eager to start. But one of them has been working in the industry for several years, and he's already so excited to start. He texts me and he goes, I have a VIP client that lives in Colorado, and he wants several pieces, and I don't have merchandise because I don't have a store yet, but our e-com does, and we just launched pre-fall. So I directed him, I said, look and see what's available on our website. He goes, the challenge is he needs it overnight. And I was like, well, let me see what I can do. And I've never met this client, and I just started working with the sales associate, and it was just a simple, a text conversation from a relationship that he had with somebody from his previous employer. And we were able to facilitate a sale and get something overnight to this client just through the simple, texting, word of mouth, human connectivity. But also I explained to him about, partnering with proximity, and how it's going to be such a helpful tool to be able to use the CRM platform, to be able to have a link and be able to have a FaceTime conversation at the touch of your phone, and be able to connect with your clients so seamlessly, kind of like we're connecting right now over a virtual platform, but having that e-commerce type of virtual selling space on top of a sales associate working with you in the store talking about products. So it all becomes full circle in how we can digitally connect by just word of mouth and connecting from people that we maybe never worked with before, but it's all it takes is one other relationship to make another relationship. So we're all connected. But I thought it would be a great way to highlight what proximity has to offer too, as far as connectivity in a virtual platform.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been working with our customers extensively, especially this year, on how can we still connect on a personal level if they can't come into the store, and how can you still drive sales through the website, and kind of tear down the walls between brick and mortar and e-com sometimes, and have this unified brand experience. And the sales associate could be working from home, doing a video chat, showing product, informing them on the website, and so forth. So thank you for that. And Kevin, we are super excited to work with you and get ready for that opening in September.
Me too.
So we're now, I know. So we're now coming to a closing to it, and I have one final question for everybody. And Susie, I'll go with you. And it's like, what do you see as the future for retail?
I mean, I'll go back to sort of my core belief is that retailers have got to recognize that they're not running shops anymore, but they're running customers over a lifetime. And how do you sort of pivot your thinking from opening a shop, or not opening a shop, as in the last few months, and start to think about your role in your customers' lives, and how you can change how you interact and connect with them. And I think that the merging of physical and digital interaction is where it's going to be really interesting.
Brendan, how about you?
So I think we're all kind of on the same the wave here, but it's going to be that human connection, that personal interaction. I think it comes full circle, and especially at Chalhoub. The history of the company was salespeople going door to door with suitcases and selling wares out of it, and having that black book of clients that I know I can call. And it's going to be their anniversary next week, so I'm headed over. And I think in the boom of industry, that kind of went to the side. And what we've seen now is, especially when it comes to the approach of like clienteling and how we take digital information and we turn it back into a physical interaction. And we're not just focusing on what happens at the till. It's, you know, what experience do you have when you come to the location? How can I make that experience better for you? How can I make every step of your journey better? I think that's what the real future is how can I make your life just a little bit better for having known you and you having come in here. Going back to the convenience and that Susie mentioned earlier, all those touch points, all these things, this is what's going to make this be really take it forward, is combining all these things together.
No, absolutely. It seems like there's been a consistent message throughout this whole entire webinar. And, you know, Kevin, last one's on you again.
So I think this is the future of retail, is sharing best practices and being connected like this on a webinar internationally and sharing what's working across the board for everybody. And but also I think it's the future is more personal and it's more human connectivity, and the way we make people feel is it lasts much longer than the product does. So it's about that feeling, and keep on coming back for more. And also the future of retail is Amiri, because we're opening in September. So just wanted to say that.
No, congratulations again. Again, thank you, Susie, Kevin, Brendan. The answers that I was hearing, you know, simplifying it at the end, it's about people. It's people connected to people and personalizing and the relationships that we have with the people at the brand and the brand itself. And, you know, we are a clienteling solution. We do work with these types of challenges where how do you connect in this now more digital world, especially with everything going on in the world? How do you have appointments, these virtual chat sessions? How do you talk over WeChat, WhatsApp, SMS, email, etc.? Just to get the people close to each other, the ability to even talk the way that we're talking right now. If you want to learn more about our solution, please scan it. There's a QR code here. You'll actually see what it's like to go through this journey. And thank you again. That's it. Remember, if you could take anything from this webinar, it's the future of retail is human. It's people connecting to people and sharing memorable experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much for sticking with us with that conversation. Rob, Brendan, Kevin, Susie, great insights, much appreciated. So we are live right now on the PSFK main stage. If you look in the chat below, you will see a link and you can pop over there for the next few hours. It's just one stage and one conversation. Hope to see you there. Thanks.